Yes, good morning. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. How y'all doing today? Yep, Thursday. We're doing it. So much to talk about today, so much to contemplate. We originally really wanted to bring our guest on and contemplate all the things that we were seeing in regards to these police killings. We talked to our guest, we were in the middle of the trial of Derek Chauvin. Now we've had a verdict. But before we could even get a verdict, man, you got the shooting of Makhia Bryant over there in Columbus, Ohio. Lots of debate on whether or not that the officer was right or wrong. Then we also had Daunte Wright, man, Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Andrew Brown, Lindani Mayeni over there in Honolulu. It's just a lot going on, and we wanted to have a conversation about split-second decisions and how the justice system views these different circumstances. Lots of debate on whether or not young Makhia, the circumstances, should there have been, alternative uses of force in that case, thus and so. But then we have Brother Tim Scott last night. I don't know if y'all saw President Biden's address to the Congress. Wasn't it awesome to see two women sitting on those, the chairs back there, Speaker of the House and the Vice President? That was pretty cool. Lots of hope and inspiration is what I'm thinking this morning after we heard Joe Biden's speech. And as is customary, the Republicans, got a chance to have a response or a rebuttal, and they chose the only African-American Republican in the Senate, Senator Tim Scott. He's coming out of South Carolina. And I think that what's got people buzzing is his statement that says, America is not a racist nation. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Well, let's just get right into it. Man, ladies and gentlemen, our legal pundit, the best criminal defense attorney this side of attorneydom, Ludlow B. Creary II, Esquire. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Greg. How are you?
Man, I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good.
Right. Listen, my brother. So you saw the address last night?
I did. I did see it. Well, I didn't see President Biden's address. I got the highlights on that, but I did listen to Tim Scott.
Okay.
In its entirety.
What's your gut reaction there, counselor?
He lost me at America's not a racist nation. He lost me there.
Yeah. It's interesting because in all fairness, what I've heard from Tim Scott, and then I watched, because I've been watching the whole Derek Chauvin trial. I'm a fan of the Black News Channel. And sidebar, I was disappointed last year when they were on the air and all the stuff was happening in Minneapolis, and they were not, they didn't have a strong presence. But I have to tell you, they've redeemed themselves in terms of how they're covering this trial and other, African-American issues across the country. And so I'm really glad for how they have grown. Now, that said, I watched the Tim Scott. Well, I listened to it because I was doing some work in my studio, but I listened to that. Then I took a break and I watched the Black News Channel, post analysis of it. And they had two Republican pundits come on, and it was actually a big mess. Paris Denard, I think is the brother's name, and I can't remember the sister's name, but they were trying to justify Tim Scott's remarks. Now, what I walked away from it was, okay, so there's a lot of Black people who have assimilated into, or they thought they had assimilated into, American society. They were able to let microaggressions and all these things that we experience roll off their back. They, speak properly. They're very comfortable moving in and out of the white world. It's all good. At the same time, they have a feeling that they have arrived, right? And they're different from others. But I think that in the last year, we have been kind of reminded just what kind of nation that we live in. And I think that's a wake-up call for many Black people who have like, okay, I've left my consciousness of racism behind, and I feel like Tim Scott is probably one of those. And he's probably just really having a hard time, because for him to get up and say America is not a racist nation, maybe he was trying to say the nation is not racist, but people are. What do you think?
I can only take what he said at face value, Greg. He said America is not a racist country, and I'm not going to try to rationalize what he said, because there's no rationalizing it. He's simply he's a politician, and this is working for him in his constituency and keeping him in office. So he's going to do what works for him. And I got the sense last night that he's setting himself up for a presidential run in 2024.
I got that sense too.
Especially if Kamala runs.
I did get that sense too.
Yeah, he's going to be the guy that represents the Republicans in the 2024 race. That's my prediction.
Yeah, and I think news media probably sees that, major networks and all of that, because as they were waiting for him, I was listening to CBS News, and CBS was really laying on the fact that he was a Black man, that he came from South Carolina. They were laying it on so thick that they actually cut a portion of his very opening sentences, because they were still talking about him being a Black man from South Carolina. And I said, oh, wow, you know what? The whole thing is just being orchestrated to put this man's face out there front and center. And you're right, maybe for a presidential run.
Now, he's got to broker some kind of deal with Trump, because Trump is, from what I can see, Trump intends to run in 2024 as well. So that'll be interesting to see how the Republicans figure that out, because Trump isn't really somebody who can be controlled. So we'll see. But all I know is I didn't like anything I was hearing.
It was a trip. Honestly, It really was a trip. I just, grabbed my popcorn and watched my social media feeds go crazy. Black folks were like, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Somebody said, who hurt him? Who hurt Tim Scott? Oh my goodness. Something, it's really something. And you know what? The man has a sense of accomplishment coming from South Carolina. I was stationed in South Carolina, and, certainly that was one of the epicenters of Jim Crow and, just hardcore. I mean, the whole South, but South Carolina, definitely one of the epicenters for, our horrible history of racism in this country. And he had to have seen that. I'm thinking, or at least he's just a generation removed. And I think the slogan "From the Cotton Field to the Congress" is great. It's catchy. I feel that. But now you have to come to a reckoning, Congressman Scott.
Yes.
Yo.
you gotta stay grounded in reality. But and I'm trying not to be partisan, because I'm not really partisan. I'm really a moderate politically, but I don't really see any connection to the facts coming out of any members of the Republican Party in the last, I don't know when the last time they've been grounded in reality, in my opinion. And this siege on the Capitol was proof that they've just gone, they've gone into the stratosphere with their alternative facts.
Yeah. In all of this period over the last 12 months and just analyzing everything, I've just come to the conclusion, maybe some folks have already been at this conclusion, I'm just coming to it now, is neither party is for us. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like
I agree to a large extent. What I think, and I tell people this, people are like, oh, you're just, people say this all the time. You're just, falling for the Democratic agenda without question. You're just a robot for Democrats. I'm not at all that. I am very aware of how the Democratic Party has let our community down, how they've given a lot of lip service and have really done nothing to back up that lip service, and have always put our issues at the back back of their priorities. But the Democratic Party is in a position where it acknowledges that it needs African American votes. We have power and we have history with the Democratic Party, and we can shape the destiny of the party and shape our own destiny as well. It's really a power game. If the Republicans had been there and we'd been entrenched in the Republican party, well, then we could do the same with them. But the Democrats is where we've got all the headway. All we've got to do is use our power in the Democratic Party. That's all we've got to do is use our power, and they'll be responsive to it. America it runs on money and power. African Americans have to understand that's how this country runs, and we have to invest in our future, which means if we get behind a candidate, one thing we've got to do is start committing our money to particular candidates, and then we've got to hold them accountable, and they've got to know that we could switch our vote at any moment. And I think once that gets through to them, that they cannot take us for granted, things are going to happen. Things are already happening. Joe Biden is already responding to African American demands. And so it's not because he's just such a great guy. He's just another politician. But he understands that Black people put him in office. At the end of the day, we're the ones who voted to put him over the top. And he knows, and the party knows, that the Republicans could very easily flip the script, and they're already doing it. And Tim Scott is an example of is a part of their strategy to get African Americans to turn to the Republican Party and support the Republican Party and put them back in power. So it's a power struggle for us. It's like a bidding war between record companies. You know what I mean? Republicans are about to enter a bidding war with the Democrats for African American votes. Now, the Republicans unfortunately don't understand that make up your mind. If you're going to be passing laws to disenfranchise us, then you're not going to win us over at the same time. So, hopefully they work that out for themselves. But nonetheless, we are in a position, I think, a very unique position in history where we can gain a real foothold, but we have to be focused. We have to have our agenda, and we have to be ready to enforce our agenda by withholding votes if we have to, and letting politicians know that they don't own us and they can't take us for granted. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Very, very profound there. Profound, my brother. Well, one of the main issues on our mind in the Black community is this. For me, I think it's been going on all along, but it seems like an epidemic of police shootings ending up in the death of unarmed Black people. We're still, I was listening yesterday and people keep saying the name of George Floyd, as they should, but understand that there's so many other names attached to this epidemic that we're seeing, this scourge that we see in America, and so many generations. This has been going on for years and years and years. And as a lot of people make the correlation between some present day police officers and the slave catchers, that whole paradigm it's actually very real, Yes. But we've seen in recent times, man, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, so the young woman in Columbus, Ohio, Makhia Bryant, shot and killed, took 4 to the chest, man, from police officers. Okay, so the scenario is this. So Makhia's in a rage. She's fighting. I guess people attacked her is the story I'm beginning to hear. Yes. Anyway, she has a knife. So she's in a rage. Police officers, when they arrive, they see the knife. She's about to stab the girl in the pink, if you all have seen the video. Officer shoots, Makhia's dead. A lot of people are saying, okay, why did he have to shoot? Why did he, could he shot her in the leg, disarmed her? All kinds of us Monday morning quarterbacking, and they want, another, they're claiming another, instance of police murder. Innocent woman should not have lost her life.
Right.
I watched the video a few times, and I think the best analysis of the situation comes from the activist Shaun King, where he says, the dispatcher probably let the officer know when he got the call that it was Black people. And even if he didn't, when he arrives on the scene, he sees it's a bunch of Black people. When he exits his vehicle to handle the situation, his mind is probably racing where, okay, who do I tackle first? How do I do it? Do I pepper spray him? Do I tase him? What the heck? Then he sees the knife and he shoots to kill. So Shaun's position is it's not the split-second decision-making that the officer had to make. It is that inside of that split-second decision-making, the officer decided to shoot to kill. And then Shaun goes on to contrast that where, okay, you have white guys going into places and shooting, you have these mass shooting, 8, 9, 10, 20 people killed, and they're taken into custody, peacefully, even offered hamburgers and cup of coffee and all of that whole thing. So there is an ingrained predisposition to shoot to kill Black people, and that is the problem. What do you think?
I think broadly he's correct. I think we live in a culture that devalues Black life, and the mindset going into our communities for law enforcement is contain and control. It's not protect and serve. Mm-hmm. And so, they're always police officers are always going into situations that involve Black people, ready to take the last resort as the first resort. So I think he's right in that sense. Now, I analyze this in different ways. I analyze it in a broad sociological and socio-political context. Mm-hmm. And then I analyze it as a lawyer who's worked in the criminal justice system for 23 years. And I think about it, from a prosecutor's perspective, and I think about it from a defense lawyer's perspective, and I try to look at it from the police officer's perspective. And so you've got a lot of things going on here, and they can all exist simultaneously. You can have white supremacist policing. You can have training that predisposes police officers to shoot to kill. And you can also have a situation where a police officer reasonably perceives that, hey, this is about to be a murder or attempted murder, and I've got to stop it. And because it's involving a deadly weapon, and because I only have a split second to make a decision, this is the only option that comes to mind based on my training and based on, my thinking in this very, very short flash of a moment. So let's just analyze it. I'm going to just give you a cold, hard analysis from a legal perspective, mm-hmm. right? So, and I'm going to mix it up because I'm going to mix it with how the cop is seeing it, along with how a lawyer or a judge would see it, or even a jury. So he arrives and his body cam is on. So you basically see what he sees. Gets out of the car. Now, first thing I notice is he pulls his gun out. So that, to me, is very much in line with what Sean King said. He pulls his gun out, and he doesn't even know that he's going to need it, but he's already got it out. So all of a sudden, he comes upon this situation, and you see the fight, and then you see her arm raise, and you see her about to plunge, you know, from what I can see, it looks like she's about to plunge a knife into this other girl's neck.
She's about to do that, dude. She is.
Now, that is, by my analysis, I would imagine that a prosecutor would also see that as an attempted murder.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, legally, that officer is justified in using deadly force. Mm-hmm. Legally, he's justified at that point. Mm-hmm. And so then he shoots her. A lot of people are like, why did he shoot her 4 times? Why did he shoot her 4 times? Well, police officers, generally speaking, are not trained to wound. If they're going to pull their weapon and shoot you, they're shooting center mass, which means they're shooting to kill. So if an officer is shooting to kill, then whether it's 1 shot or 4 shots really isn't the issue, because he's shooting to kill. Now, why 4 shots as opposed to 1 shot? Because 1 shot might not stop the threat. 4 shots most definitely are going to stop the threat. 4 shots to the chest are, you know, I'm no forensic scientist, or I'm no pathologist, but 4 shots to the chest are highly likely to make that person drop. Mm-hmm. And that was his goal, to make her drop the knife and no longer pose a threat to this other girl. So when you analyze it from that perspective, he did what he was trained to do, and arguably he did what he should have done, because this young lady in the pink is alive. She might have been bleeding out on the sidewalk had he not shot Makhia. So it's an ugly situation. It's a tragic situation. But at that moment, was he supposed to let her kill somebody else so that there wouldn't be a police shooting? You know, so you know, it's kind of, all these things came up and clashed with each other. You know, the fact that he pulled the gun out without knowing what was going on, his mentality was, you know, this is a situation, a dangerous situation, and it's black people, so I better be ready to kill somebody. And then he's actually faced with a violent crime happening right in front of his face, a violent crime that is likely to lead to the death of another person, and he's got to act. Mm-hmm. So why not use the taser? A lot of people ask. Well, tasers are unreliable. You shoot a taser, it's, you know, an officer tases her once. By then, the knife's going to be in the other girl's neck or in her chest. You know, there's no guarantee that taser is going to work. And if it doesn't work, the other girl's dead.
Because some people have a big resistance to that, built-up resistance to that taser, huh?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So taser wasn't, you know, it was going to be a reliable weapon, and he didn't have the taser in his hand. He would have had to switch, and it would have been too late. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why? You know, we addressed why shoot her 4 times. You know, to stop the threat, and that's how police officers are trained. Mm-hmm. So it gets down to training in terms of why he took the path that he took, why he got out of the car with the gun drawn, and why, you know, he didn't have his taser in his hand as opposed to his gun. That's training. And yes, training police officers is drenched in white supremacy. So somebody else was talking about, beanbag. Well, why didn't he use a beanbag? He didn't have a beanbag. He was not supplied with a beanbag shotgun. Had he been supplied with a beanbag shotgun, that probably would have been the way to go. You know, it would have been more reasonable if he had it in his possession. And maybe he did have a shotgun with beanbag pellets in his car. I don't know. But had he been holding a beanbag shotgun in his hand when he approached the scene and saw Makhia with the knife, that probably would have stopped her. Because that beanbag would have hit her with such force that it would have knocked her down. So it probably, but that was not in his possession. I don't know if they're only supplied with those officers in that particular department are only supplied with those when they're dealing with riots. I don't know, but that wasn't in his hand. I know that. So that's why he didn't use the beanbag, because it wasn't in his hand. And so you have a situation where, you know, we're talking about the broader context of a racist system of law enforcement, but then we're also talking about this officer saving another person's life, which is what he did. He saved that girl's life.
Yeah. I agree with that. Wow, that's a tough one over there in Columbus, Ohio. That's a tough one. All right, so moving over to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, the whole controversy is they're only showing 20 seconds of the body cam. They went to court yesterday to get more body cam footage and were denied by the judge. You know, what do you think about that situation? Is it, you know, we see there's video where the SWAT team is rolling up on Brother Andrew, and boom, he's shot several times, including one to the head, and they're describing it as an execution. You know, why do we need all the body cam? Let me say it. Let me start with the obvious question.
Yeah, we need the evidence. We need the body cam. I was listening to the news yesterday. The federal judge would not release the remaining body cam footage for 30 days because he said he was concerned about the safety of people that who are in the video. And so I don't know. You know, I don't know if that was a good call by the judge. We have to wait and see. We have to wait 30 days to see. Apparently, the lawyer for the family says it was an execution based on what she saw. And then I believe it's the prosecutors. I don't know who on the law enforcement side was speaking, but they said, no, that's not the case. Each side has staked its ground on this. And we're not going to know anything till we get that body cam footage. And it looks like about 29 days now, it'll be released. And then we'll see the truth.
Yeah, I saw the initial press conference where Ben Crump and the family's attorney and a lot of community leaders were intersecting with the law enforcement officials down there to get more released. They only got the 20 seconds of the body cam release. They transcribed it and they shared what they saw, with the public at the press conference. But what struck me too is that Ben Crump and the other gentleman, I think he's an attorney, he's a civil rights attorney, he's representing the family, and the woman who I believe she's an attorney, but she also was representing the family there. And they were shocked and appalled and visibly shaken with how they were spoken to as they tried to petition to get more body cam footage released, and so, I'm just thinking they're in a good old boy town and they pretty much got shut down when they went in with their petitions and whatnot.
Right. Well, it's not good PR for the police department to be hostile. So I don't know what's going on there. They, some of these police departments just, they live in a state of denial. And I was talking to somebody the other day about the fact that, you know, police officers, if they're going to have any, if they're going to make any headway with the people living in these communities, in African American communities and Latinx communities, they have to be humble, they have to have humility, and they have to acknowledge what people are upset about and why people don't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep acting like you're right and everybody else is wrong and be self-righteous and think that that's going to win the day.
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement has to understand that the world has changed. The pendulum is swinging away from this, you know, law and order police state that we've lived in for, I don't know, 25, 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Longer. And that police officers aren't just seen as these heroes going into the communities, you know, to save people. Police officers are seen as a threat in our communities. You might go home to your community and be seen as a hero, but when you coming in, you're patrolling my community, you're seen as an occupying force that is a threat.
Yeah.
So if you sincerely want to change how law enforcement and the community interact, then you've got to be willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
You can't expect the community to just accept what you are and get over it. And then there's another thing that disturbs me. There's this movement to get rid of George Gascon, the Los Angeles County DA.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole thing, victims' rights. That's the mantra, victims' rights. George Gascon doesn't care about victims. And there are some Black law enforcement and Black prosecutors who are getting caught up in that whole victims' rights thing. And what I have to say to them is, if you Black people, if you're not going to be able to convince Black people that the threat is themselves. Black people see the threat as a racist system. Black people don't see themselves as the threat. So if you want to push this victims' rights mantra, you need to understand that you're not going to win Black people over with that, because what that mantra means, from what I can gather, is these people in these communities are the threat, and that's who we need to make the poster child of our movement. Well, that sounds to me like another Willie Horton thing.
Mm.
Willie Horton, remember Willie Horton?
I remember. Yes.
It sounds like some more Willie Horton, the Black villain, the Black monster, the Black boogeyman. That's what it sounds like to me. Now, they can use whatever language they want to use, but at the end of the day, that's what I hear them saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I say to Black law enforcement and Black prosecutors, don't become a tool for white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Change is upon us, and change is here to stay. Mm-hmm. We're not going backwards.
Well, let me ask the hard question. I mean, I feel you 100%. I also have spent time with organizations like Justice for Murdered Children, the advocacy group for mothers who have lost loved ones to gun violence. And by and large, these people have lost their loved ones at the hands of Black folks.
Yeah.
I mean, so what about victims' rights, though? Well, are we saying we can't just discard them. I mean, because truth is truth. There's some crazy stuff happening in the hood sometimes.
We know that. I'm just trying to find what I wrote, what I said, my quote. Mm-hmm. What I said yesterday was, the problem I see with selling the victims' rights platform to Black folk is that many Black folk don't see themselves as victims of their own people. They see themselves as victims of a racist system. So yes, there is a lot of black on black crime. There is. But that black on black crime is a function of a system of oppression and being deprived of education and all of the things that have historically happened to us as a people that put many of us where they are. And then a culture of survival, a survival culture develops. And you're not dealing with what's creating this culture of survival, which involves gangs and violence and drugs and a lot of bad things. Mm-hmm. You're just gonna put a Band-Aid on it by shooting and killing every black person you see who appears to be up to no good to you, and then you'll sort it out later because they're not worth anything anyway. They're all just there. They're animals. That's the mentality. So that's the mentality. So this whole idea that now you're going to place the blame back on them, victims' rights. This victims' rights movement, in my opinion, isn't about preserving black rights and protecting black victims. It's about preserving the status quo, which people in other communities want to be in place so that they can feel safe. This is no different than the slave patrols of 200 years ago. This is the slave patrol. Mm-hmm. It always has been. Mm-hmm. Chief Parker recruited LAPD officers from the South to control black people in Watts.
He did. He did. That's a fact. That's history right there.
so come on, let's not pretend.
Yeah.
Again, let's not pretend that there isn't a whole system of white supremacy that created the ghetto in the first place, that created this underclass in the first place.
Yeah.
Let's deal with the problem and not the symptom, and then blame the victims of the system for the survival culture that is the only way they know. The only thing they know how to do. I mean, let's be honest.
So now, are we going to change that though? That's like, to me, that's, each individual person has that, that prejudice, that white supremacist ideal ingrained in them. I mean, we can change all of the policies and all that there, but can we really change, people? And you're right. We do live in a country. The microaggressions that you experience,
I'm talking about macroaggressions. Yeah, there's microaggressions, but we're dealing with
macroaggressions, like full-on war.
Police murdering unarmed black men is a macroaggression.
All right, that's right.
Murder. It doesn't get any worse than murder.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. But then, okay, let me ask you this. And I'm just looking and watching, and these are the thoughts that come across my mind. Oftentimes I wonder because we have to also, I do believe, Ludlow, we have to look within. So, did behavior, because in these cases, behavior led to the death of these people. Like,
when you say behavior, death of who?
Like, okay, so I'm saying this. If young Makhia wasn't in such a rage and trying to stab somebody, she'd be alive today.
That's true. And
if George, God bless his soul, he was murdered on those streets, and doggone it, we finally got justice. We hope, because I hope they just put him under the jail and throw away the key. But if brother hadn't been out there on his bench, he'd be alive today.
Well, I agree with that, Greg, but that doesn't justify keeping your neck on a man, your knee on a man's neck for 9 minutes when he's apparently in distress.
Right.
It doesn't justify.
I agree.
Let's go to Makhia.
But so what I'm just saying is we have to have this hedge of protection around this occupying force that you've described, right? And I think that we also have to look within ourselves and try and I mean, everybody has
I agree.
their
I
thing.
agree. We have look. I'm not. Let me clarify myself here.
Mhm.
I've made a distinction between Makhia and George Floyd.
Yeah.
I believe that officer did what he had to do in Makhia's case.
Okay. Yeah.
And I believe that the officer murdered George Floyd in that case.
Yeah.
I agree with you that Nakia had the knife in her hand. George Floyd was on a bender and he went and passed a fake $20 bill, and he wasn't exactly cooperative, or he wasn't completely cooperative when they first approached him. I understand that. And I understand that there is a lot. I'm not denying that there is. I handle gang cases, so I'm not saying that people who commit murder, black men or black women who murder other black men and black women and black children shouldn't be held accountable for that. I'm not saying that at all, and I'm not saying that we don't need the police. We do need the police, but what I'm saying is just like in every other aspect of society, the police department, law enforcement is permeated by white supremacy, and you can see it on how they even approach the community in the first place, how they approach black people in the first place. When I was growing up and I was a preteen and I was living in Beverly Hills, I got a first up close and personal experience with how welcomed I was in the city that my parents owned property in and were paying property taxes in. Every time I walked up the street from school or from my house to the store or to my friend's house or whatever, I got stopped and asked for ID.
Yeah.
I won't say it was every time. No, it wasn't every time, but it was whenever a cop who didn't.
It was enough.
If it was a Beverly Hills police officer who hadn't seen me before, I'm a kid. I'm just a kid.
Yeah.
Then he wants me to show him ID.
Yeah.
I was walking out of my front door and a cop turned around, made a U-turn, got out, walked up to me and said, "Why are you walking out of that house?" And I said, "It's because I live here." "Well, let me see some ID." "I don't have any. I'm 13. Mm-hmm. "Okay, well, we're going to go see if you really live here." Knocks on the door. My grandmother answers the door. So the point is this is how they see us.
Yeah.
So whether we're in majority neighborhoods, affluent neighborhoods, or whether we're in the hood, they see us the same way. And so
and they come kind of hard too, don't they? That whole aggressive.
Exactly. So I'm not saying there aren't black people who are up to no good, but what I am saying is, again, don't make the community, don't make members of the community the boogeyman so you can justify what you do to black people.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, let's talk about our brother Daunte Wright there. How does the officer mistake the taser for her weapon? What the heck?
What the heck?
Right?
That's manslaughter. I mean, that's recklessness. If she, a 26-year-old veteran, doesn't know which side her taser's on, which side her gun's on, what her gun looks like versus what her taser looks like, how a taser feels in your hand versus how a gun feels in your hand. I mean, come on, you couldn't pull it together enough to make sure you had the right weapon in your hand, lady?
Right. Yeah.
So she was properly charged with manslaughter. And again, it gets back to their training, and it gets back to how we are perceived. We are constantly and always perceived as a deadly threat, always. And because we're perceived as a deadly threat, the first thing they do is pull out their most lethal weapon when they feel threatened. And I'm not talking about just white cops. I'm talking about cops, period.
Yeah.
And I will say this: I don't see a lot of stories about African-American police officers killing African-American men. It's usually a white officer killing a black person. At least that's what's in the news. So that might tell you something too. Again, how we are.
Over the years, I've spoken to Black police officers who have described situations that they're in. And it seems to me, as I look back and analyze the words that they spoke, is that they have a measure of thought that maybe a lot of these white police officers don't. One officer, I remember him sharing that they were chasing a suspect and he was going through a cemetery. And where he was on the back end to make sure that the suspect didn't come out of the back part of the cemetery. But he saw, and he said he saw something in the kid's hand, and it pulled his weapon. Suspect gets apprehended, but what it ended up being was a MAC-10, what he saw in his hand. And he said that had he not had the foresight or the intuition to think, that could have been very, very bad.
Yeah. So he didn't kill the kid. He ended up not killing the kid.
Right. So there's that thought. There's sort of a measure of compassion that's in there.
There's a measure of compassion, and there's a sense of this person's humanity. What people need to understand about this issue is that obviously, based on what I've read, the statistics are that more white people are killed by police than Black people. But there are 270 million white people in America.
Right.
There are 48 million African Americans in America. African Americans are killed at a higher rate. The percentage of stops that end in fatalities is much higher with African Americans than it is with white people. So the raw numbers, because you are the majority in this nation, 270 million, the raw numbers are going to be higher, but the percentages are lower.
Right. Yeah.
So that needs to be understood, because that gets thrown in our face too, along with black on black crime, which nobody's denying black on black crime. And nobody wants to see black on black crime. And we do want you to protect us from black on black crime. We do want you to protect us when an unfortunate young teenager is trying to plunge a knife into another young teenager. We do want you to protect that girl from this other girl killing her. We do want that. But we don't want more of the same. We don't want things to go back to where they were. The change has happened for a reason. This movement is real. This movement has legitimacy. Black lives matter, and we can't go backwards. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a fact, and it brings me to another case here. And I don't know if you've seen this one quite yet, their counselor, but I learned about it from my friends out in South Africa. And Lindani Mayeni was shot and killed in Honolulu by police. And the body cam, they released the body cam footage, almost immediately. But it's still kind of very murky as to the circumstances and all of that. So there's a lot of questions there. South Africans feel like, Black Lives Matter should be activated. And they're even saying, asking the question, well, do Black Lives Matter only when the killing involves Black Americans? And that over in South Africa, what people don't know, because it's not in the headlines over here, certainly over in the headlines over there, but one of the major political movements, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, are daily going in front of the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria, South Africa, and protesting, taking a knee right in front of the embassy, blocking the traffic, all of that. They're protesting because U.S. police are killing Black people at such an alarming rate right now. And this is the move. This is the moment. I would love for you, after you get off, if you get an opportunity, I'll send you the link to the video. And then even if you go on Coffee Conversations with Greg J, the Facebook page, I did post it the other day because earlier this week, we had a brother from Johannesburg to talk about that and a few other things that are happening in South Africa. But it's very interesting. The body cam footage, you don't know what's happening, but what is clear is Lindani fights the officers. Okay, I mean that's what I see. He fights the officers, and I don't know why he felt like he needs, but they tased him first, and it doesn't phase him. You know, I mean, it's very dark and murky. You can't see, real, but that body cam footage is really, really essential to our fight against these murders.
Absolutely, and it's essential to exonerating the police officers as well. It works for all parties. Again, with Makhia, that body cam pretty much exonerates the officer. Now, again, we can talk about the broader context, but his actions were reasonable under the circumstances, and the body cam showed that. So the body cam is good for everybody. That kind of transparency is great for getting to the bottom of what really happened. You know, when I talk to young people, I always tell them comply, even if the officers are wrong, because the thing you really want to do is get out of this situation intact. You want to get out alive. If the officer was not acting in a way that was professional or even legal, then you follow up with a complaint and you follow up with whatever else, a lawsuit or whatever else you need to follow up with. But you resisting when you're in that situation is a loser for you. The officer is going to win. If you resist, you've just committed a crime. Now you've given the officer probable cause to do whatever else he's going to do because you're resisting. And if your resistance escalates, now and then you are perceived as more and more of a threat, then it could end up in deadly force. And that deadly force can then be justified. So I always tell young people, don't fight with the police. Don't feel that, well, you're wrong and I don't think you had a good reason to stop me and I'm not doing anything you say and you better keep your hands off me and I'm not getting out of the car, and it's just going to go all bad for you.
All bad, sure.
It's going to go all bad. So don't do those things, young people. Don't do those things. If the officer is wrong, deal with it on the back end after the situation is over.
I have a theory, though. I have a theory. I think we're running around these streets in a state of fight or flight. You know how your adrenaline kicks in and there's that natural thing. And I came up with this after I watched the murder of Daunte, and I just felt like that young man, first of all, he's on the phone with his mom, and all this. So I just feel like the police, we've seen so much. We've been, bombarded with the pornography of Black pain so much over the last couple of years that, I know when I see the police, there's that feeling in my gut. You know what I mean? That I don't like it.
Get behind me.
Right?
Behind me, my heart starts beating, and I
man,
haven't done anything. I'm just driving, but
so I'm wondering if with the things that we see are a byproduct of that, physiological function, and so I guess we do have to be constantly counseling our young people, constantly counseling ourselves to remain calm and comply. But I think that this fear that we have, we're being programmed.
We've been programmed. 400 plus years of programming. We've been programmed to, and that's the problem with America. America has been programmed. America has been programmed in systemic racism, and we also have received that programming, and a lot of us have internalized white supremacy. A lot of us have. And so, yes, it is a physiological thing. It is.
And no matter how you slice it, even when you have these conversations with your white colleagues and everything, and they're saying, oh, they have all these excuses why this stuff is happening. I see some of the trolls, the white supremacist trolls on our YouTube page this morning even, and talking about, we should stop, self-victimization is what they're calling us doing right now. And I just say this, when I send my grandson to the store to get, go get Papa a bag of rice so we can cook this dinner. I mean, while he's gone, my nerves, right? It's just really, really crazy. And so this is what this system and these situations have done to us. It's abusive. America, you abusing us.
It's just like an abusive relationship, and the abuser always blames the victim. And then the victim in Stockholm syndrome starts blaming themselves, and they identify with the abuser. And that's, what's happened to a lot of Black people. And it's been perpetuated from generation to generation. But I want to address this whole self-victimization thing, because people, a lot of times when I speak or when I write, people come back at me at, stop playing the victim, and only you can put yourself where you want to be in life, and if you want to be a success, this and that. And I chuckle to myself, because I'm like, you don't even, I don't think you know my background.
Right.
I don't come from, my father was a very successful doctor. My mother was an educated woman. We were a Black family that moved to Beverly Hills, and not because my parents were entertainers or athletes. My dad was a doctor, and he was able to go there. I went to some of the best schools, and I became a lawyer, and I have gained a modicum of success, or a certain amount of success, in being an entrepreneur, businessman, lawyer. So I don't even come from a background of victimization.
Right.
There was a period of my life when I was young that I did end up in the hood. And I've talked about that in other contexts. And it was over a 6-year span that I lived in the hood. And I'm not going to get into how that happened, but that aside, I don't come from a background of, I haven't done anything with my life and I'm blaming the white man.
Right.
That's not who I am.
Right.
So when I'm talking from my experience. I grew up, a big part of my formative years, all my friends were white. And I would go to their houses and I'd hear their parents talk. And what got ingrained into me was, you're okay because you're not really Black.
Oh, I've heard that one.
But if I brought my cousins and my other Black friends over to their house, it would be a problem. They would not want that. So the point is, okay, I was there in the 1% world for a while. They didn't want us. They didn't want us as a community coming up in there. Right. They're not interested in our progress. White people, generally speaking, especially at the top of the rung, are not interested in Black progress.
That's right.
They're not. So it's not about, taking a victim stance. I'm just looking at the reality of the world that I live in and saying, look, Black people, if you want to move forward, we have to rely on each other. We have to start loving and respecting and trusting each other, because trust me, they'll let one or two of us in the house up there in the big house, but that's all that's getting in. They're not about moving a whole generation of Black people into affluence.
Yeah. Now,
if we flex our muscle and we flex our power, then it's another story, because power respects power. Mm-hmm. That's all so I am not a victim, and I don't have a victim mentality.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. I'm on your team, man. I mean, it's nation building time more than ever. I mean, we have to trust one another and build with one another and flex our power, like you say. That's what's up right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time.
Well, it's the 29th anniversary of the civil unrest, 1992.
Yeah.
I see Molly Bell's been on here. She wrote a book on here. Let me just kind of see. Let's read this. I agree there is yellow on yellow crime, brown on brown crime, white on white crime, red on red crime. We must make it clear and define crime. Attorney Ludlow is calling out the crime, which is systemic racism. Greg J. Breonna Taylor was in bed. Death is not punishment for fake money, tags, fighting with each other, sleeping in bed, walking down the streets. Those are infractions. A ticket could take care of some of those. Police kill us just because. I agree. That's what I see. Man, Ludlow Creary, man, thank you. I know you got to go out there and keep somebody out of the penitentiary.
Yeah, I have to go to court. I have to go to court right now.
Yes, brother.
It's not that serious a case, but yeah.
Okay, that's what's up. Any last words you want to say to the people, and how can they look, if they need an attorney, how do they get on?
Well, you can find me you can Google me, Ludlow B. Creary II. The law offices of Ludlow B. Creary II. Mm-hmm. My office number is 213. Mm-hmm. If you got a pen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 323. 305-4849. My email address is LBC, like Long Beach City, LBC2 at lbclawexperts.com.
LBC, the number 2?
Yes, the number 2.
Yeah, say it again. LBC2
at lbclawexperts.com. And Greg, I just want to say one last thing. So
yeah,
to get some clarity. I said this earlier. I believe that we need the police, but we need police reform. I do not hate the police, but we need police reform. I also believe that we have a lot of internal work to do in our community, and that there are behaviors in our community that perpetuate some of the suffering. So I am not all one way or another, but I call them as I see them. And as for the 92 riots, I lived in them. I saw them up close and personal. I was there.
Me too.
And LA has progressed a lot since then. So let's not go backwards.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. And man, what an incredible time that was, and you're right. I mean, LA went through its, its paces in the aftermath of that. I mean, Gates was removed, the consent decree and all of this community policing, all of this stuff has happened in LA. And I think for the most part, they're better. For the most part,
they're better. Mm-hmm. But the mentality needs, especially with the sheriff's department. I think the sheriff's department, that mentality needs to change. Yeah, and occupying force mentality needs to be replaced with a mentality of protect and serve in all communities. And the police need to act like they're a member of the community, like they're a part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sheriff, it's their turn to get, people need to examine that situation. I do see the outcry happening. I know they're even calling for the sheriff's resignation, and, they're trying to eliminate these gangs. We all know that they exist inside there, so they need to stop that. That's always been since I was a kid.
Yes.
You knew they had those gangs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what's up. All right, everybody. You can check this out on Coffee Conversations with Greg J, our Facebook page. We just enrolled in the Facebook Watch, so we should be coming up fairly regularly now, all across social media. You can also get the audio only version of Coffee Conversations. We're going to post that. And wherever you get your favorite podcast, we're on iHeart, Apple, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google, name it. We're there. Just Google Coffee Conversations with Greg J, and it should pop up, and you can just listen to it while you're driving in your car. You don't have to see our beautiful faces and our magnificent physiques. You can just listen to our lovely voices and get the information in that way. Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. That is music for your soul, conversation for your mind. Come on over there. There's a lot of great news stories affecting us, culturally relevant, not only from a local or state level, but from a global perspective. That's what we're doing, is building bridges of music, arts, and culture. Always remember, y'all, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.